So I think we're talking about the propensity, the predisposition of America to always choose the path of war, and it's telling that the man who coined the term military-industrial complex, who are the main beneficiaries of this policy, was Dwight Eisenhower, who was actually an American general in the Second World War. So this is a former military man. Yeah, former military man, supreme allied commander of the Western Front, actually warning Americans about the dangers of an industry that, profits off human destruction. But let's picture, we've spoken about the war as one would encounter it in Afghanistan. Let's picture you are an American taxpayer. Okay, you've been working for, let's say, 20, 30 years. You've paid your taxes, and when crisis strikes with, let's say, COVID-19, people are going bankrupt, you're going to lose your job. The taxes that you've paid over those 20, 30 years, instead of being paid to sort of support you during your hour of need, they've actually just been blasted in Afghanistan to kill innocent. Exactly. Your taxpayer, your hard work, your money is not actually benefiting you as the government should aim to do so in your hour of need. No, it's already been wasted in billions and trillions in a gaping hole that is the war on terror. So going forward, Erik, right? I mean, it's funny that we're having this conversation because, my mother is from Qandahar. I've been to Qandahar quite a few times. We could have potentially crossed each other. You in the uniform and myself as a civilian, but we're here now discussing how best to avoid this course of action in the future. How do we, let's say as Afghans and as people on your side of the spectrum, come together to sort of combat the John Bolton way of thinking in the world? Because it's something that we need to come together to do.
I mean, you're basically asking how we can help solve sort of world peace, which is a tricky one.
It is. But I mean,
it's still, a very worthy question. And I think that there needs to be a couple of different forms of conversation. One is, people like myself who have had that experience trying to convince Americans of the experience that we had and say there are different priorities. We need to, respect people the same as if they are Americans. And if you have that, there's less cause for grievance. There's less likelihood of threats of terrorism when you respect other people. They're less likely to want to kill you, it turns out, when you actually are a decent and you can find ways to cooperate. So I think that there's an internal discussion that needs to be happened sort of within your group. And that is a discussion with me trying to have this with the United States. And it also presumably needs to be happening as well with Afghanistan. And then there also needs to be joint conversations happening between to empathize and understand that despite perhaps language barriers of Dari or Pashto or something like that, that we're all just people. And there's other ways to solve this. And people value different things. The idea of, what is a good life means different things to different people depending on where you grow up. And as long as that good life doesn't involve hurting other people, then is there a way that we can try to make amends and that, that's freedom is really the freedom to be able to do and act as you please, so long as you don't hurt others.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason I would say that voices like those of yourself are so important is not only because, you're someone that's lived, as you said, viscerally through the war on the other side, but also because when the sad reality is that given the racial or the religious component to it, when someone such as myself with a funny sounding foreign name or from the wrong ethnicity or speaks the wrong first language, mention some of the premises that you mention, we'd automatically be, derided. I'm sure Sangar can agree here as terrorist sympathizers, apologists, Europe terrorists in disguise, all of that sort of thing. So I think that's one of the reasons why the someone called Erik, who was on the other side, sort of articulating arguing the same things that we are, adds a lot of credibility to what we're saying. Because the sad reality is that since time immemorial, names, colors, races, these things have all been used to deride the other.
Yeah. There's I imagine that anywhere you are in the world, there's a bunch of meatheads that communicate their life philosophy through completely unnuanced memes, to bucket you or bucket me, and don't have conversations about it. I think you just have to sort of keep doing what you're doing and have the open conversations and sway at least the sort of middle bucket of people that are not on the radical extremes, to be like, no, this is a very normal way of dealing with another group of people.
There is a concept we always sort of allude to it, but I think one of the benefits of this conversation is that we have to acknowledge our common interests as people. We have to acknowledge that what is causing suffering in America for people, obviously the level of suffering in Afghanistan cannot be compared to what people experience in America. But still, I wouldn't say that people in America are happy with their current situation, where their money is being wasted, their infrastructure is not being developed, and there is an economic crisis, sort of. And we have a war, so we need to start talking about what is in our common interest as people, and we need to address this and become more active and involved, and demand from our leaders, politicians, to work towards a particular course of action that actually serves our benefits and no longer serves the interests of the producers of arms and weapons and bombs, because obviously they are the only ones who are benefiting from this.
Yeah. And I think in a previous point you made when we were talking before, that you end up having this situation where the sort of disenfranchised group in the United States, and it's referred to as the poverty draft, for the folks who join the military are often the propensity to enlist is higher when you have fewer options. When you come from a poorer background, when you have less education, and fewer job prospects, propensity to join the military increases. And as you talked about, you basically have one part of society that's getting the short end of the stick, joining a force to go somewhere else, to often engage in conflict against others that are also getting the short end of the stick. And the folks that and the point as well is we're still not net beneficial or net better off by even those that are in the military industrial complex getting wealthy. If you look at somebody like Joseph Stiglitz, who won the Nobel Prize in economics, he writes quite compellingly about how investment in the military does not provide the same return on investment as other forms of public spending in infrastructure, education, or healthcare. So you're hollowing out your own country in the process of hollowing out someone else's.
Yeah, I mean, I think the conversation about the role of sort of economic background in terms of your political leanings and whatever is an interesting one. So, I mean, I don't doubt for a second that, if you're more disadvantaged, you're more likely to be predisposed toward violence or military sort of lifestyle. It's funny because John Bolton mentioned this in his book as well, where he said giving people a more prosperous standard of living doesn't preclude terrorism. That's a Marxist idea. And Sangar raised the point that actually John Bolton is creme de la creme in society. He is the establishment, and he's a raving extremist himself. So like that conversation is an interesting one. But yeah, the old saying is war is old man. The game of old men and young men are sent to fight and die. Those young men generally are economically disadvantaged, especially in the US, where sort of, if you don't have the fees to go to university, you'll join the military for a year or two or something of the sort.
Guys, thank you so much. I appreciate the conversation. I've really enjoyed speaking with both of you.
Same here. It was an honor having you as a guest, and we will hopefully we can have you as a guest in future as well to discuss, because obviously there is so much that we could still talk about.
The one thing I would like to add as well is that with the book, I still want to find a way, if you know people who will help to translate for Dari or Pashto, so that this can be communicated clearly and authentically in the native language, because it's an important story, and I think that folks would benefit from hearing, quote, the other side in the same way, as Afghan stories more frequently in the US.
Thank you very much for joining us, Erik. Like I said, Voices, this is something where it's a comprehensive, somewhat a team effort here. We're sort of all on the same side to try to map out a better future, not just for the United States or for Afghanistan, but, for those that are actively disadvantaged by the war industry across the world, whether that's in the future or in the present. So, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast to tell us about your experiences of the lack of accountability of civilian casualties, or the lack of rigorous controls that are not so rigorous, like you said. So thank you very much for being with us, and I just want to thank once again all of the viewers and the listeners as well, who've obviously got us to the stage where we can actually have our content, which is very inconvenient for many out there, and now we're on audio platforms as well. And is there any final comment that you'd like to make, Sangar?
Yes, I'm going to add the link to your website and
yes,
the Amazon link for your book in the show notes, so people who are interested in the book, they can read more about you and order your book, because I recommend everybody to read Erik's book, and
definitely.
Obviously your Twitter handle, so people can reach out to you.
The Twitter handle's already there.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
That's
You're
wonderful.
welcome. You're welcome. It was a pleasure having you. And thanks, everybody, again. Next episode, we will be interviewing someone else who is also someone who has been in Afghanistan and fought on the front line. So make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we are on all streaming services right now. You can listen to our podcast on all streaming services. So again, thanks again, and until the next time, wassalam.